I have a little compressor. It's an oil lubricated one. I really like it. I don't do a lot of heavy duty stuff, but I do have an extension cord wrapped around the handle. It makes it kind of hard to get down into that on and off pressure switch. And also the pressure switch was always coming up and this thing was going off in the middle of the night sometimes, and I got really annoyed. So I just put a little extra cutoff switch here. And it is really just a switch in the middle of the power cord. It didn't really cost anything. I'm going to show you how you can do it yourself. I just happen to have the switch in this little box, and it's a good idea for me because this thing was always bumping up and going off when I didn't want it to. This way I don't have to go through the time and trouble of replacing that pressure switch or maintaining it at all. I tried rebuilding it or whatever, you know, just the stuff that I saw on YouTube, and none of it worked. It just kept popping up. So anyway, the compressor works great. I just wanted a little relief from it going on and off when I didn't want it to. This is a basic outline of the configuration. I'm using a metal box here. I'll talk about that in a second. And you can also use a metal cover here. I just am using stuff that I have already. So compressors, if you move it, you may want something metal like this, something heavy duty, or the heavy duty plastic. This is just a regular duty single pole switch. Nothing too fancy. This is gonna illustrate the power cord. And if you want to use a plastic box, just bear in mind if you're in a rugged environment, it can crack, and I don't know. It's up to you. I like the tabs on this one because the first thing that you're going to want to do is attach this box to the compressor somehow. And then in this case, for this metal box, I carved out a hole in the bottom. This is sharp to some degree. Compressors are always vibrating. This is only for the purposes of illustration. I recommend using foam tape, some heavy duty tape, and make sure this is really, really, really protected so that you're not cutting this insulation on this power cord. And you'll see how that's important here in a second. But again, if you want to use plastic, it's easier to deal with. If you're using a plastic box and you don't have these tabs, make sure that you drill some holes in this box first, line it up to where you want it to go, and stick the screws through this way so you don't have screws going into the box, which could come in contact with the wires. Just keep any sort of metal things away from the wires. Once the wires are in there, you don't know if they're going to rub up against that screw or whatever. So it's going to be a screw that'll fit inside this box and then be able to slip through this hole. So just bear that in mind. Just plan ahead a little bit. And again, if you're using plastic, it's going to be the same thing, only make sure that you use washers, things so that the plastic, when it moves, it isn't going to break. So just really plan on securing this box really well, making sure that there's an opening on the bottom for the cord to come through there, because you're going to need to do that. So that's kind of the beginning. If you don't like soldering, you could probably try to use those crimp connectors. I'm not a big fan of those, so I'm going to solder these wires to make it solid instead of stranded. So just remember, you got your power cord, just stick enough up through this bottom here so that you have enough room to work on it. You're going to be in a different scenario than this. I'm doing it for illustration, you know, but you're going to be looking at a situation where these are up like this. And if you soldered before, that's no big deal. But anyway, I just wanted to give you an example of this, and I'm going to go ahead and solder it this way anyway. Thought I'd give you a shot of this. So making these solid instead of stranded, that's actually called tinning, I believe. So I think I said soldering earlier. It doesn't matter. But you can see you're only cutting into the black line or the lead line here. So the other ones are going to be intact. You don't need to go into that. I didn't even cut all the insulation around them. I just nipped, and then you'll notice that this is maybe a couple inches of insulation removed. I just left it all in there. You're just cutting off this circuit. I also like using a switch that says on and off. So you're going to know whether it's on or off. Let's say, for instance, your compressor is off and you want to leave the area without knowing that the power is off. It could come back on. So you want to look at it and see the word off. So we talked about insulating this opening in the junction box or the switch box where you're going to loop the power cord in. And I would recommend you do that even if you have a plastic box. So you're going to want a nice soft cushion. The blue is just, again, it's not going to, it wouldn't cut it for me. I think on the bottom of mine I use electrical tape and some duct tape. It's real thick and it's going to be substantial. The thing that's missing is strain relief. So you notice that I have a couple zip ties around the wires up there, and I got them pretty tight. So the wires are going to be held together in a pretty tight little loop inside there, and I didn't tighten down this one side, so hopefully you can see inside how that's all working out. Kind of hard to see a little bit, but anyway. So before I tighten down the screws that hold the switch to the switch box or junction box, I just looped that zip tie like this. Now I'm going to do that over here, and you know, you can pull them pretty tight. So I was hoping that I could push this up and get a better view, but essentially you're going to go this side this way, and then this side, let's see if I can do this with one hand. Well, I had to use both hands. So you get the idea, you know, one's keeping the wires tugged this way, one's keeping them tugged this way, and they're both those zip ties are keeping the wire from being pulled down. And this is going to be open under here. There's really no other strain relief. If you have a better idea for strain relief, then great. Just make sure that you understand strain relief is important. Insulating is important. This is going to vibrate. Using a different box, you're just going to have to, whatever materials that you use, you're going to have to sort of sort through that whole thing on your own. But as far as switching your compressor on and off, it's really been a help to me, and I'm not messing with that pressure switch. I have my pressure set where I want it, so I almost never have to go in there. And again, this is just for homeowners. Sorry about that, a little loud, truck going by. This is just a light duty use compressor situation. Maybe it'd work in commercial situations where you're moving the compressor a lot or you're using it a lot. You may not even need something like this, but if you're having the need like I did and you want to come up with something, this is very inexpensive. If you look at the parts, I'll list them, and it's effective, and if you do it right, it's going to last you a long time too.